Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The blade stopped an inch from my throat, not because the executioner hesitated, but because a gauntlet hand had caught the steel, ignoring the blood that instantly began to weep over the iron fingers. I did not give you permission to break my things. A voice rumbled, deep enough to vibrate through the frozen cobblestones I knelt upon. The executioner trembled, dropping the hilt as if it were molten lead. I couldn't look up. I stared at the snow, where my own tears were freezing, terrified that the monster who had just saved me was far worse than the death I had been promised. I was Kalin, the boy with the shattered skin, the curse of the northern villages. And he was General Valerius, the Iron Wolf of the South, a man who collected kingdoms like trinkets. He stepped closer, his shadow swallowing my shivering form. He didn't lift my chin with gentleness. He grabbed my hair, forcing my face up to the harsh winter light. His thumb brushed the pale, jagged patch of skin that spanned from my jaw down my neck, the mark of my curse. "They say you are broken," Valerius murmured, his eyes dark with a hunger I couldn't name. "Let's see if you bleed like the rest of them." Growing up in the remote village of Oakhaven, I learned two truths before I could even walk. Silence was safety, and my skin was a sin. They called it the fragmented curse. In a world where unblemished skin was seen as a sign of the goddess's favor, I was born a canvas of chaos. My natural complexion was a warm, deep bronze, but it was interrupted by stark, milky white patches that bloomed across my body like spilled moonlight. They twisted around my arms, splashed across my chest, and, most damning of all, crept up the right side of my neck and cheek. To the superstitious villagers, I wasn't just ugly, I was an omen. A cracked vessel. If the harvest failed, it was because Kalin had looked at the fields. If a child fell ill, it was because Kalin's shadow had passed over their cradle. I was 18, yet I had never felt the touch of another human being without a flinch or a blow following it. My parents had died when I was young. Punishment for birthing a monster, the elders whispered, and I was left to scrape a living as a scullery boy in the village inn, hidden away in the kitchens where guests wouldn't see my contagious face. Then came the war. The Southern Empire, led by the ruthless General Valerius, swept through the north like a wildfire. They didn't burn Oakhaven, they demanded tribute. Gold, grain, and labor. The village elder, a man with a heart as shriveled as winter fruit, saw an opportunity. When the Southern captain demanded a personal servant for the general, someone disposable, to test food for poison, the elder didn't hesitate. He dragged me from the kitchens, threw a rough burlap sack over my head, and shoved me into the mud before the general's black stallion. "Take this one, my lord." The elder had groveled, his voice shaking. "He is cursed, broken goods, but he serves well enough. If he dies from your enemy's poison, it is no loss to the world." That was how I ended up kneeling in the snow, waiting for the executioner's sword. The general's own men had wanted to kill me the moment they saw my face, fearing I would infect the camp with bad luck. But Valerius was different. After he caught the blade, the camp fell into a deathly silence. The general was a giant of a man, broad-shouldered and clad in black armor that seemed to absorb the light. He had a scar running through his eyebrow, and his eyes were the color of storm clouds, gray, turbulent, and merciless. "Stand up," he commanded. I tried, but my legs were numb from the cold and fear. I stumbled, bracing for the impact of the ground, but a strong arm hooked around my waist, hauling me up effortlessly. I said stand, not crawl, he growled. He looked at the elder, who was now sweating profusely despite the freezing wind. "You offer me a broken thing as tribute? You insult me." "And no, great general," the elder stammered. He is a wretch. We thought to spare you the burden of taking a valuable son from our." Valerius laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "You thought to give me your trash." He looked back at me, his gaze tracing the white map on my cheek. "What is your name, boy?" "Kalin," I whispered, my voice rusty from disuse. "Kalin." He tasted the name. "Take him to my tent. Bathe him. Burn these rags. And if anyone mentions the word curse again, I will have their tongue." The logic was simple, though I didn't understand it then. Valerius didn't save me out of kindness. He saved me because he was an arrogant conqueror who refused to let superstitions dictate his actions. If the gods said I was bad luck, Valerius would keep me just to spite the gods. I was a tool for his hubris. Nothing more. Life in the general's tent was a terrifying upgrade from the inn. I wasn't beaten, but I was watched. Constantly. Valerius was a man of few words and violent action. He spent his days planning conquests and his nights drinking wine while staring at maps. My job was to pour the wine, fetch his food, and stay silent. But the curse made things difficult. The other soldiers avoided me. The camp followers made warding signs when I walked by. I tried to make myself invisible, covering every inch of my skin with high-collared tunics and long sleeves, keeping my head bowed so my hair curtained my face. One evening, 3 weeks into my servitude, I was preparing the general's bath. The water was steaming, scented with oils plundered from a merchant caravan. I was focused on the temperature, testing it with my elbow, when the tent flap opened. Valerius entered, shedding his armor with practiced ease. He was exhausted, the tension evident in the set of his jaw. He glanced at me, then frowned. "It is stifling in here," he noted, gesturing to my heavy wool tunic. "Why do you dress for a blizzard when you are standing next to boiling water?" "I am fine, my lord," I murmured, keeping my eyes on the floor. "You are sweating," he countered, stepping closer. "Take off the tunic." I froze. "My lord, take it off. You will faint, and I do not wish to drag your unconscious body out of my bath water." Panic clawed at my throat. "Please, no. It is unsightly." Valerius paused. He was a man who commanded armies. He was not used to refusal. He closed the distance between us in 2 strides, his presence overwhelming. "I have seen corpses rotting in the sun, Kalin. I have seen men turned inside out by siege engines. Do you think your skin can scare me?" "It is a curse," I whispered, the indoctrination of my childhood choking me. "To look upon the cracks is to invite ruin." "Then let ruin come," he snarled. With a swift movement, he grabbed the collar of my tunic and ripped. The fabric gave way with a harsh tearing sound. I gasped, crossing my arms over my chest to hide, but it was too late. The lantern light washed over me, illuminating the chaotic mosaic of my torso. The bronze skin was an archipelago in a sea of milky white. A large, jagged patch covered my heart, branching out like lightning strikes down my ribs. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for the disgust, waiting for him to recoil. Silence stretched, heavy and thick. Then, I felt a callous finger trace the line where dark skin met light on my shoulder. "Open your eyes." I obeyed, trembling. Valerius wasn't looking at me with disgust. He was looking at me with the intense scrutiny of a scholar examining an ancient text. His eyes were wide, the pupils dilated. "Who told you this was a curse?" he asked, his voice unexpectedly soft. "Everyone," I breathed. "The priests. The elders. My parents. They were blind," Valerius murmured. He traced the white patch over my heart, his touch searing. "It looks like marble laced with gold. It looks intentional." He stepped back, breaking the spell, his expression hardening again into that of the general. "Finish your duties." "And Kalin?" "Yes, my lord." "Stop hiding it. If I see you wearing that wool sack again, I will have you serve the war council naked." It was a threat, but for the first time in my life, a command regarding my body didn't make me feel dirty. It made me feel seen. As the army marched south, returning to the capital for the emperor's victory gala, the dynamic shifted. Valerius became possessive. He no longer treated me as a mere servant, but as a fixture at his side. He demanded I sit near him during meals, his eyes often drifting to the patches of skin I no longer hid as zealously. But the capital was a viper's nest, and Valerius had enemies far more dangerous than battlefield soldiers. Lord Malachi, the high priest of the southern temple, was a man whose piety was a thin veil for his ambition. He hated Valerius, whose military power threatened the temple's influence. And when Malachi saw the demon-touched boy the general kept at his side, he found his weapon. The victory gala was held in the grand ballroom of the Obsidian Palace. I was dressed in silks Valerius had commissioned, deep blues and silver that contrasted sharply with my skin. The sleeves were cut loose, exposing my forearms, and the collar was open. Valerius had insisted. "Let them stare," he had said. Let them see what I possess. Asterisk. And stare they did. Whispers followed me like a swarm of hornets. Is that a leper? No, look at the pattern. It's the mark of the shattered soul. The general keeps a monster as a pet. I kept my head high, drawing strength from Valerius's hand resting casually on the hilt of his sword beside me. He was drinking wine, seemingly bored, but I saw the tension in his shoulders. Lord Malachi approached, his white robes sweeping the floor. He smiled, a serpentine expression that didn't reach his cold eyes. General Valerius, Malachi crooned. A splendid victory in the north. And yet, you bring back strange souvenirs. I bring back what pleases me, priest, Valerius replied, his voice bored. Malachi turned his gaze to me. I felt as though slugs were crawling over my skin. This boy, he carries the mark of fragmentation. The scriptures say that such marks are the result of a soul rejecting its vessel. He is unstable, dangerous, a conduit for misfortune. The only misfortune here, Valerius said, setting his goblet down with a sharp clack, is your interruption of my evening. Malachi's smile vanished. You mock the gods, General. To harbor such impurity within the palace walls insults the sanctity of the emperor. The boy must be cleansed. He stays, Valerius said, his voice dropping an octave. He is mine. Is he? Malachi raised a brow. Or is he a curse that will rot your house from the inside? Perhaps we should test the theory. Before Valerius could react, Malachi snapped his fingers. Temple guards, who had been blending into the shadows, lunged. It was a trap. They weren't trying to arrest Valerius. They were trying to provoke him into drawing a weapon in the emperor's presence, a crime punishable by death. But they grabbed me. Get off, I shouted, struggling as rough hands clamped onto my arms. Valerius, I cried out, terror seizing me. Valerius moved. He didn't draw his sword. He grabbed a heavy silver candelabra from the table and smashed it into the face of the nearest guard. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Screams, shattering glass, the rush of bodies. Don't touch him, Valerius roared, a sound of pure, primal fury. He was a wolf among sheep, brutal and efficient. He broke the arm of the man holding me, kicking him into the banquet table. He pulled me against his chest, his heart hammering against my back like a war drum. Are you hurt? No, I gasped, clinging to his tunic. Good. He looked at Malachi, who was backing away, pale with shock. Valerius's eyes were glowing with murder. You wanted to test a theory, priest? Here is my theory. If you ever look at him again, I will tear down your temple brick by brick and bury you in the rubble. The entire court was frozen. The emperor, watching from his throne, raised a hand to halt the guards. He looked at his general, then at me. Valerius, the emperor said, his voice calm. You shed blood at my feast for a servant? Valerius looked the emperor in the eye. Not a servant, your majesty. My soulmate. The silence that followed was deafening. Even I stopped breathing. The scriptures, Valerius continued, his voice ringing through the hall, say that true partners are carved from the same stone. That when they are separated, they shatter. Look at him. He grabbed my hand, lifting it so the light caught the pale patches. He is not cursed. He is the map of where I have been missing. He is the light to my shadow. The cracks you see are where the light gets in. He turned to me, ignoring the hundreds of watching eyes. His hand came up to cup my cheek, his thumb brushing the white patch on my jaw. Let them call it a curse, he whispered to me. I call it a masterpiece. And then, in front of the priest, the emperor, and the gods themselves, the iron wolf kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was possessive, desperate, a claiming that burned hotter than any brand. It was a kiss that promised protection and threatened death to anyone who challenged it. The scandal was immense, but Valerius's power was absolute. We retreated to his estate, away from the prying eyes of the court. But the danger wasn't over. Malachi was humiliated, and a humiliated man is a dangerous one. 3 days later, I was alone in the estate gardens. Valerius had been called away for a security briefing, a ruse I realized too late. A cloth soaked in chloroform clamped over my mouth. The world spun into darkness. I woke up in the damp, stone underbelly of the temple. I was chained to a grate in the floor. Malachi stood over me, holding a branding iron that glowed cherry red in the gloom. The general is bewitched, Malachi spat, his composure gone. He sees beauty in filth. But I will fix it. I will burn away the white spots. I will make you one color, boy. The color of charred meat. I struggled, the chains rattling. He will kill you. I choked out. He will thank me when the spell is broken, Malachi sneered. He lowered the iron toward my chest, aiming for the white patch over my heart. I squeezed my eyes shut, screaming silently, waiting for the agony. Boom. The heavy oak door of the cell didn't open. It exploded inward, splintered wood showering the room. Through the dust and smoke, a figure emerged. Valerius. He wasn't wearing his armor. He was in his shirt sleeves, his chest heaving, a sword in his hand dripping with fresh blood. He looked like a demon dragged up from hell. Malachi turned, his eyes bulging. You cannot be here. This is hallowed grow. Valerius didn't let him finish. He crossed the room in a blur of motion. The sword flashed. Malachi's hand, the one holding the branding iron, fell to the floor, severed at the wrist. The priest screamed, a high, thin sound that echoed off the stone walls. Valerius didn't stop. He kicked Malachi into the corner, then dropped his sword and fell to his knees beside me. His hands, usually so steady, were shaking as he fumbled with the keys he had taken from a dead guard. Kalin, he rasped, unlocking the cuffs. Kalin, look at me. I fell into his arms, sobbing. He crushed me against him, burying his face in my neck, right against the patch of skin Malachi had wanted to burn. I'm sorry, Valerius whispered, his voice cracking. I'm so sorry I left you. He pulled back, his eyes scanning my body frantically. Did he touch you? Did he burn you? No, I wept. You came. You came. Valerius looked over his shoulder at the whimpering priest. The look in the general's eyes was devoid of humanity. It was pure, cold predator. I will not kill you quickly, Valerius said to the priest. You wanted to cleanse him? I will show you what true purification looks like. He picked me up, carrying me out of the dungeon like I weighed nothing. As we walked out into the night air, the estate guards were waiting, looking terrified of their own master. Burn the temple, Valerius commanded, not looking back. Burn it to the ground. The recovery was slow. Not physically. I was unharmed, but the fear lingered. Valerius changed after that night. The arrogance softened into something deeper, something anchoring. He resigned his commission as general, telling the emperor that if the empire could not accept his heart, he would not fight for it. The emperor, fearing the loss of his greatest warrior, issued a decree. The mark of the fragmented was no longer a curse, but a sign of divine selection. A political move, yes, but it kept us safe. 1 month later, we sat on the balcony of our private villa overlooking the sea. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of purple and gold. I was lying in Valerius's lap, wearing a robe that slipped off my shoulder. Valerius held a small brush in his hand. Beside him was a pot of gold dust mixed with oil. Hold still, he murmured. With infinite patience, he dipped the brush and began to paint. He wasn't covering my skin. He was tracing the borders. He applied the liquid gold along the jagged edges where the white patches met the bronze skin. Do you know what this is? He asked softly, the brush tickling my neck. Gold paint. I teased gently. It is an ancient art from the East, he explained. When a precious bowl breaks, they do not throw it away. They repair the cracks with gold. They believe that the piece is more beautiful for having been broken. It has a history. He finished tracing the line on my cheek and leaned back to admire his work. The gold shimmered in the twilight, turning my so-called deformity into living art. I looked like a statue repaired by a god. You are not cursed, Kalin, Valerius said, his voice thick with emotion. You are kintsugi. You are my gold. I reached up, tangling my fingers in his hair, pulling him down. For years, I had prayed to be fixed. I had prayed to be normal. But looking into the eyes of the man who had burned a temple for me, I realized I didn't want to be normal. I wanted to be his. And you, I whispered against his lips, are the only one who knows how to hold me without breaking me further. Valerius kissed me, tasting of wine and promises. The world had called me a monster, a curse, a cracked thing to be discarded. But in the arms of the Iron Wolf, I had found my value. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf, and how the wolf turned cracks into gold. If you enjoyed seeing Valerius burn the world down for his beloved, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a society that called you a curse, or would you let it burn? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then,